Top 10 Speech Research Topics. Why is Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech "I Have a Dream" still important after 60 years? MLK's "I Have a Dream" is arguably the most remarkable speech of the 20th century. It was incredibly inspiring back in 1963 and remains such today. In your paper, you can determine what makes this speech timeless. Show how it embodies the ideals of freedom and equality. Additionally, you can provide examples of famous activists inspired by it. Law, freedom of speech and the right to offend. This topic is related to the issue of freedom of speech. In particular, it focuses on the right to offend as an essential democratic principle. Indeed, this right allows us to exchange ideas freely, even if they may be deemed unpopular. But it's hard to balance it with other important ethical aspects, such as protection from hate speech. What can be done about it? Learning disabilities, speech and language disorders. Here, your task is to research various speech and language processing disorders, their causes, effects, and possible treatments. We recommend paying attention to each disorder's range of symptoms and severity levels to make your study more nuanced. Highlight the importance of raising awareness and reducing stigma related to speech and language disorders. Al Gore's speech on global warming. Al Gore's speech on global warming forever changed the world as we know it. It was influential but also controversial. In your essay, you can study the scientific evidence Gore presented in his speech. Also, assess the persuasiveness of his arguments conveying the gravity of global warming. How did the public react to it? Why was it criticized? Private speech and psychology. Private speech simply means talking to yourself as means of encouragement or self-reflection. Your research paper can review the development of this type of speech starting from early childhood. Next, explain its role in more complex mental processes. Finally, enumerate the possible uses of private speech in education and everyday situations. Winston Churchill's Iron Curtain speech. Here, you can discuss the significance of Winston Churchill's famous speech. In particular, analyze his use of the term Iron Curtain to denote the divide between the communist East and the democratic West. Additionally, look into the reasons why this speech heightened the tensions between communist and democratic countries. Inaugural speech of Donald Trump and other Republicans. In this essay, you can compare and contrast Donald Trump's inaugural speech with those of Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George W. Bush. Determine the common rhetorical strategies used by these Republican presidents. Some examples include focusing on national security and promoting conservative values. Language and the Brain, Discovering Speech Mechanics. In this interesting essay, you need to look into how the brain processes and produces speech. In particular, focus on the fundamental connection between language acquisition and brain development. Point out the brain regions responsible for this process, such as Broca's and Wernicke's areas. How do they work? Serial killers, speech analysis. Did you know it's possible to identify serial killers by their speech patterns? In fact, such analysis is actively used in criminal investigations. You can discuss its main methods in your research paper, paying attention to the interpretation of vocabulary, sentence structures, and emotional content of serial killers' speech. Speech differences in bilinguals and monolinguals. In this essay, you can explore the fascinating topic of bilingualism's influence on speech production and interpretation. In particular, you may compare and contrast speech-related processes in bilinguals and monolinguals. Determine language proficiency's cognitive advantages and how they relate to speech processing. Find more research topics on studycorgi.com.